We're patients, not criminals. 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 We're patients, not criminals.
We clearly passed a law that created change in California that has now evolved into a nationwide movement of patients, caregivers, and collective friends and support that is rapidly putting pressure on the federal government to change the policy that has been in effect since Richard Nixon that has criminalized an otherwise non-criminal act of a patient following their doctor's right to use this medicine. Here in California, local governments are regulating it, moving forward, putting together safe use policies for their own local communities that differ upon their own local needs. And the federal government is continuing to arbitrarily go in and raid collectives that are otherwise locally supported and regulated and are paying taxes and otherwise generating good infrastructure for California, when otherwise the federal government is just ignorantly ignoring all the benefits that this issue brings to the floor, while continuing to spout the lies that it's generated out of facts that they can't substantiate. We've likened it in California for some number of years because we've clearly identified a state and federal conflict where locally we have support, and in some ways we have complete compliance with local police and communities, where the feds have come in, Gestapo, and taken medicine under badged sense. And we've likened it badge robbery, where they have badges, they take what they want, they don't necessarily charge those that are involved, but if you ask for your medicine back, they simply charge you and say that you've committed this heinous crime that's committing a blight to the community. And I think that in some ways it goes against what the electorate passed in 1996, because it said that the state should in some way ensure that there's a safe and affordable supply. Currently in California, the state has been vacant on that issue and has left it up for the patients and the collective gardeners that have been the ones that got this law passed in the first place to really cause the solution to become evolved. Well, it really goes back to what happened in 1970 with Richard Nixon placing this medicine in a Schedule I status through the CSA. When they did that, it created a criminal status that it circumvents a lot of the arguments. And since that point, the federal government has used the argument, as long as we're talking in the criminal context of debate, it doesn't matter what we say, it's fine. But they won't allow us to talk outside of that realm. And currently in California, that realm has been left 10 years ago or more by the wayside, and it's not currently policy, and that's where I think our friction is currently triggering their reaction that is in some ways likening us to creating a permissive attitude towards something that they've had zero tolerance of. And like it or not, it's here to stay, and they're going to have a hard time taking something back now in California that people don't see as a right, or I mean as a privilege, but more as a right. And it's been triggered over the realm of the last 10 years, because it first was a privilege in California to have this use of medical cannabis, but now it is being more looked at as a right. That these people that have had set up with their doctors years ago the right to use this are not, I think, not sitting by wayside and letting the feds come in and take it away from them. In different counties across the state, we have tolerances as much as 25 plants in each patient or adult garden. And I think that says a lot towards what the locals are saying about this compared to what the feds say, that this is a dangerous drug, and liken this to a lot of the other things that have caused problems in our community that they relate to the drug policy. And I think that this is a stepping stone to further sanity when it comes to whether or not we take the step forward with a rational way of dealing with drug policy versus the way that they've been, I think, allowed to deal with us. Because we're not causing problems, we're trying to create solutions, and they're getting away with painting us as the problem in our society when we're not. And our local governments are I think, proof in that.
My thoughts are that faith without action doesn't get you anywhere. And like Eleanor Roosevelt said, if you believe in peace is good, if you think about peace is fine, but unless you work for it, it doesn't get you anywhere. The same thing Simon Wiesenthal said about liberty. You know, you can't take it for granted. If you want freedom, it's not a gift from God. You got to work for it every day, and I believe that. So I think many people in this country, millions actually, many more millions than they acknowledge, believe that marijuana ought to be legal, and marijuana patients should be left alone, and that these laws are counterproductive, and they shouldn't waste their money on it. However, they think someone else should be active, somebody else should take a role, somebody else should be the one to finance it, somebody else should be the one to run for office, somebody else should put their name in the paper and a letter to the editor, someone else should call in on the talk show, but you know, they got to realize that it's really them all along, and it's their freedoms that are at stake. If we trust someone else to guard our freedoms, we're going to lose them. So I'm encouraging people to stand up for their God-given and inalienable rights to freedom and liberty, and the right to choose what to do with their own body and their own choice of conscience, their choice of religion, their choice of association, all these cherished First Amendment rights that are in jeopardy today in America. And we can't wait any longer. This last administration has shown us how we can even arrest more citizens. 830,000 last year in this country, of which 89% were for possession only of a small amount. Clearly not dealing with any real efforts to effectively control marijuana, but just to keep us in fear, waste tens of billions of dollars. It's a control thing, it's a racist thing, it's an immoral thing that must end, and it's time. I thought in 1974, when I started Indiana NORML after I went to my first convention the year before in Washington, that marijuana would be legal in 1978, and Keystrop said that in 5 years it would be legal, and I believed him. But you know, it's 2007, and we have 12 states that have medical marijuana, and we have dozens of towns and cities that have made the enforcement of marijuana laws the lowest priority enforcement, and they've gotten some wisdom and little sparks of brilliance around this country, but you know, the big picture still needs a lot of work, and it's time that we do it. You know, I don't believe the federal government has the power to enforce state marijuana laws. I believe that the federal government got the power to try to regulate marijuana in the state level by passing a constitutional amendment giving the federal government power to regulate that alcohol, but they haven't done it with marijuana. I don't think the federal government has any constitutional right to interfere with the dispensaries here or anywhere else. I believe that it's nothing more than domestic terrorism. It's counterproductive. They know it's a ruse. It's a political statement to threaten the owners of the property with forfeiture of their property selectively from marijuana dispensaries violates equal protection of the law, due process of the law, in addition to probably First Amendment issues and Fourth Amendment issues on search and freedom of expression and association. So I don't think there's any basis at all for this federal government to even try to regulate cannabis in California or elsewhere, and I think they're doing it in an unconstitutional manner. And it's nothing more than domestic terrorism. That's what I think it is.
It's great that last night there was another raid on a dispensary here in Los Angeles. What does this mean to our society? What the heck? Please give me your opinion on this situation.
The problem is that we have the federal government, which has the supremacy clause, so their laws trump the state laws, and they are being seen as bullies. And you know something? They are. They ought to leave these people alone and allow medical doctors to prescribe whatever medications they feel is appropriate, and let the doctors practice medicine and leave the police back to police work. And the legitimate police work is controlling people's actions, controlling their conduct, instead of trying to control what they put into their bodies.